How does the knight move?
Shit. Oh, my rook. What am I doing?
The rook! The bishop! The queen!
Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be discussing the opening. So first, let's start with the 3 fundamental principles of the opening. So at the beginner level, just following these principles is generally enough to get a good position in the opening. So let's start. First, we want to control the center. The center are these 4 central squares. Now a lot of beginners ask, well, why should I control these squares and not other squares? And the best way to put it is, if you're playing a soccer game, you wouldn't want all your players on the side. You'd want more of them in the middle so they can go out to the whole board. So that's better. So how do we control these center squares? Well, generally it starts by putting a pawn in the center with either e4 or d4. Both these moves control 2 center spaces because they occupy center space and control another one. Which one you choose is up to you. For this video, I'll choose e4. Now, typically, opponents will respond in 2 ways. There are people who understand the principles and people who don't. People who understand the principles will typically respond with e5, controlling 2 center spaces of themselves. However, a lot of people don't. This will allow us to go into what I'd like to call the dream position. Assuming our opponent is doing nothing throughout the game, we want to occupy both center spaces with our pawns. And if our opponent continues to do nothing, we start to bring out our knights first, then our bishops. So what this will allow us to do is achieve this great position where we've controlled the entire center and developed our knights and bishops, called minor pieces. Make sure to first develop your minor pieces before worrying about anything else. So already we've ticked off a full point in the development. We've controlled the center. We have complete dominance over these 4 squares. Now, what else do we have? We've also developed all of our minor pieces, which helps contribute to our second goal, develop all of our pieces. Now, what do we do next? We now want to look for the third goal, which is to protect our king. Kings in the center typically don't do as well because when the center gets opened up, they're quite exposed. So it makes a lot of sense to castle them quickly. Then after, if our opponent continues to do nothing, only now can we start thinking about bringing in some of our more heavy pieces, like our queen and both of our rooks. Now, this is what I'd like to call the dream position. We've got every single one of our pieces activated, we've got complete control of the center, and our king is tucked away nice and safe, with both of our rooks pointing straight at the center. This is quite strong for us. Now, why doesn't this happen every game? Well, our opponent will normally not just give us 100 free moves by moving their knight back and forth. They'll try to do the same, as black wants the same goals. So, what this leads is to a fight where players want to control the center and develop their pieces and get their king into safety. This basically sums up what the opening phase is all about. Alright, now we'll be moving on to an opening repertoire for what? The Italian game. So the Italian game starts after e4. We're bringing our pawn in to control the center, and our opponent does the same. I recommend bringing your knight out because it threatens to capture their pawn immediately. Black should bring their knight out to defend. They're developing a piece and defending their pawn, which allows us to bring our bishop in, starting the Italian game. So far we've developed our pieces and controlled the center as much as we can. Now our opponent will typically do the same, and now we can bring out our knights. This gives us the Giochio piano game. But an important note is, if they bring their other knight in, which makes a lot of sense, to not bring your knight in right away, because it opens you up to this trap where they will capture your pawn and then fork you, which isn't good. So it's important to remember to play d3 first to secure this pawn and bring our bishop in, and it ends up being about the same. They bring their bishop in, we bring our knight in. So then here, lots of players will castle, we can castle as well, and this completes the opening phase. It's basically all you need to know at the beginner level, with ideas of bringing our bishop to g5 or e3. So with black, we have an entirely different set of goals. Although we want to continue controlling the center and developing our pieces, we have new ways to do it. So there are two moves that white normally plays, e4 and d4. Both control the center, and both we respond the same move. On e4, we play c6, the Caro-Kann defense. Now it might seem like this is a stupid move because we are not controlling many of the center squares. However, the idea is to counterattack the center with d5 and to quickly develop. At lower levels, I have found that this is quite effective because most players do not know how to play against this slightly less popular line. Furthermore, most players see Grandmaster games with e5, which, although is the best move, they don't really understand why. This allows us to get natural development with moves like bishop f5, e6, c5, and knight c6, overall giving us a solid position. And it's good because we can copy it for d4 as well. We can play c6. This move will allow us to either transpose if they play e4, which is natural to control more center space, with d5, and we get back into the Caro-Kann defense. However, some players who are really well prepared will play c4 and want us to play a Slav. However, we have quite similar ideas in the Slav to the Caro-Kann. We bring our knight to f6, our bishop to f5, and it's overall just easy to play. So, openings are famous mistakes beginners can fall for, and there are some ways to combat. The first and the biggest mistake I see is players over-preparing. What does this mean? It means that they learn long lines where they don't really understand what's going on because grandmasters are playing it. Now, while this is fine at advanced or even expert levels, at lower levels like the beginner or early intermediate levels, it's actually quite disruptive to your learning. Because often you make a mistake in the line and then the line gets messed up and then it becomes a big problem. So if we just keep control of the center, develop our pieces in castle, we avoid a lot of these problems because all of our moves will contribute towards a goal, which will help us in both planning and the ability to play the game. It's essentially like teaching a bunch of random math formulas to a second grader. It doesn't make any sense. Even if they memorize all the formulas, they're not at a high enough level to use them properly. So what should you do instead? You should focus on the principles I talked about in the video, like controlling the center, developing your pieces, which will allow you to move up faster in the opening, as your goal isn't necessarily to get a 30-move engine-prepared line, but rather just a playable game out of the opening. Also, I recommend to help this playing consistent openings, hence playing the same thing every time. If you want to play e4, you should play it every game. Why? Well, this will give you more experience with the opening, allowing you to practice it more and more and get more used to the positions. Frequently, I see players alternating between lines too quickly. They struggle in one line because they keep losing games, and then their immediate reaction, rather than learning from their mistakes, is to just simply switch to a new opening. This is a really big mistake because you're not learning from where you went wrong or making any effort into improving the opening. You're just immediately assuming that your opening is bad. Overall, if you avoid these two common mistakes of being too over-prepared and switching lines too quickly, you can quickly prepare in the opening and get good positions consistently.